everyone. My apologies for being late. One too many vehicle issues this morning. This morning we're meeting as council.
I would like to say that our primary function is that to discuss our draft 2023 budget. The order of business is that we do have full council now, and I would like to call this meeting to order at 10:04. Our next item on the agenda is our land acknowledgement statement. The Township of Hamilton is situated within the traditional territory of the Mississauga, Nishnabek, and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Streets First Nation. Our work on these lands respectfully acknowledges their resilience and their long-lasting contributions to the area now Township of Hamilton. Is there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, that shall be recorded. Item 4 on our agenda, confirmation of council agenda. It has been circulated. We've all had a chance to review. It is recommended the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hamilton acts as follows: that the agenda for the special council meeting held on February 2nd, 2023 be approved. Can I have a move, please? Moved by John, seconded by Larry. Any comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof. Does anyone have any declarations this morning? So there are 0 declarations of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof, and that shall be recorded. Public question period. Based on agenda items only. And I'll turn to our clerk. Do we have anyone presenting at this point in time? Thank you. Presentations, Community Care Northumberland, Financial Report and Community Grant Request. Do we have someone present? Yes, we do. Bobby Joe Preston, if I'm saying that correctly.
That is correct, yes.
Good morning and welcome, and please, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for the invite. We do appreciate it. So good morning, and my name is Bobby Jo Preston. I am the manager of transportation services at Community Care Northumberland. I appreciate this opportunity to be able to speak with you today and kind of go over some of the things that we are doing and the wonderful tasks that we're doing at Community Care Northumberland. I will, however, focus mainly on transportation, but I have a slide that just provides some overall awareness of different programs and such that we have. We do have many different services that happen here in Northumberland County, but very specific to Hamilton Township as well. Being such a rural area, we found that a lot of our clients will make several requests to have services rendered in their home especially. We do appreciate the grants, and in the past this allowed us to help many Hamilton Township residents access affordable transportation and to use many services such as to get to appointments, social work, training, as well as shopping excursions. This allows many residents to continue to stay independent and access services from home. For many rural communities, there can be a very cutoff to many of the urban services that are available. Sorry. Okay. So because of the rural area and having these services not available as easily, we tend to provide more trips and more transfers into the urban area. In 2021, many of these services were able to adapt and meet the needs of our rural folks. But as we enter 2023, we've been finding there's been much of a shift that these these services are no longer offering the same structure and ability to not attend in person. We offer the ability for many residents to attend scheduled and much needed services. Specifically about Hamilton Township, we provided 264 local residents with a total number of 1,500 trips to provide services in the local area. In 2022, this number continued to grow, and we serviced 316 residents to more than 2,400 trips. Already in 2023, again, we're seeing a growth and requirement for service. An example of the type of services that we provide and support are to have residents from the county to get to the county office, to sign lease agreements, to obtain much needed funds or utilize services that are available. This has also been an opportunity for community living clients to get to day programs, classes, and services. The one service that we've noticed a real growth in is that we also provide services to clients to get dialysis services. And they have been so sick and they're no longer unable to drive, and they're not able to financially meet the need to pay for a cab for these services. The funds we receive allows us to support seniors in their home, subsidize costs, and ensure that they have reliable and economical transportation service to get to needed appointments. A cab in the Hamilton Township, I'm sure you're aware, is quite excessive. One-way trip from the Hamilton Township Municipal Building here is more than $50 just to the NHH hospital. We have some clients that are traveling upwards of 3 and 4 times a week, and then they also have to pay for the return trip as well. With our program, we're able to subsidize this and make it much more affordable, just costing them $5 each way. In 2022, we continued to find ways to support Northumberland County. We began an exciting adventure to pilot a stretcher transfer service. The service works to get bed-bound clients and critical residents to hospice centers or to home after a long stay at the hospital. We do have an agreement with them that we transfer these clients home after surgery or when they've been in the hospital due to an ailment. In 2022, we have completed approximately 36 transfers by stretcher. In the rural area, this service can often take days, and that's sometimes time that our residents don't have. We hope to continue to grow this service. Right now, our attempt is to keep this service to happen within the same day of the call that was made. These services in a rural area can exceed anywhere between $5,000 and $1,000 for a one-way transfer from home to hospital or from hospital to hospice center. When we are doing this through our piloting program, we've been able to keep this within 2 to 3 hours and in a cost less than $100 to family or to the resident. In closing, we would like to continue to provide these services in Hamilton Township and continue our relationship. We feel we provide a necessary supports throughout the community. As many of you are probably aware, and our slide will show, is that we do offer a lot of other services in the county, but mainly specifically right here in Hamilton Township, we do have quite a few registered clients. We're in excess of 1,800 registered clients. This can be everything from wellness programs. They're doing exercises, dolls, programming, social grouping, as well as Meals on Wheels, brokered workers that come into the home, as well as personal safety devices that they can purchase and have set up so if they have a slip and fall at home. All these costs, as costs continue to rise for all residents, we continue to lend support and try to provide cost-effective options for the residents in Hamilton Township. Are there any questions? Madam.
Quick comment and question. I mean, I'm glad you came today. It was a friendly reminder to what you do, and also I'm sure it was an opener for some of the new council members. I was just going to ask, the fees for a client, have they risen at all because of gas prices and so forth?
So for our volunteer program, where we have a volunteer that will actually pick up clients and stuff, those have increased slightly due to cost of fuel. However, with our specialized service and our rural transit, we have not increased those just because during the pandemic, many more people were finding a harder struggle. And as we hit 2023, we get a lot more requests for subsidization. So we haven't at this point made any increase. The only thing that we are looking or projecting is come our new fiscal year in April, there may be a slight increase for accessible service because of the distance in kilometers. Currently, we're at 50 cents a kilometer for any accessible service.
Bruce, any questions, comments? John, Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank you for being such a tremendous service into our community. Without these services, there's so many people who would be left without any way of connecting to the hospitals or the other services that are available to them. So thank you very much.
You probably appreciate it.
I think we all would echo Larry's comment and thank you. One question, just I guess because of my previous reason for being late and what you said in your presentation. Did you say a taxi ride from this office to Northumberland Hospital both ways would be $50 or $50
One
one
way.
way?
One way. So they have to send it from outside, from Coburg out. And we get that complaint a lot from our clients.
I had no idea. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No problem.
And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
It would be in order for us to have a motion to receive for information, please. So could I have a mover? Moved by Larry, seconded by Bruce. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our next. Okay. Maybe we could have clarity. Was the mic off just a minute ago? Okay. Gentlemen, you're up next. Jay, Bill, we've had a request that you speak directly into the mic.
Okay, sir. I wear hearing aids. I'll do it.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And more importantly, thank you for your support the last number of years. It's been fantastic. I'm Bill McDonnell. I'm the chairman. What that really means is at the breakfast, I do the potatoes. Jay Chatton is the vice chair and he does the eggs. We both do setup and cleanup. So we're very versatile and my wife keeps suggesting I extend my resume items. So I don't know if I will or not, but what we're going to do today is in response to your questions and also your request for us to be here. Jay has a background in engineering, so he's got the presentation in front of him and he's going to give you a vast 2-page summary of our financial situation as it sits right now. And then I'm going to give you more of a qualitative explanation of what we've done with the funds over the last few years and what we have hopes to do with it as we go forward.
Good morning, and thanks again for allowing us to come in and plead our case, I guess, so to speak. Harwood Hall is a self-sufficient, very sustainable community center that is 100% driven by its volunteers. And this year, as you can see in our presentation, we are very proud to celebrate our 75th year in existence. The first page that we've got for you is basically indicates our asset positions. The both documents that we're showing today will be as of the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022. Primarily what we're seeing here is our term deposits, our GICs, efficiently is what we hold in reserve. And I'll use terms that the council is used to. These are generally made up of donations from the public, from the volunteers, also annual profits if they exist. And the bigger part is with grant money, such as what we're talking about today. Let me get this button on. Oh, no, I didn't. Very good. Page 2, and the same time frame, depicts our sources of revenues and expenditures. Obviously, I'm not going to go through them one by one. We do have a good steady hall rental income. We have existing daycare that runs 5 days a week for the local children that can come there, and for the local parents, I guess, too. It's a nice service. The number 2 item is well proceeds. And what we do is we just ask for donations from our artesian well that runs out in the front of the building. I know you guys have all been there, and some of you have come for our breakfasts. That is another a solid source of income for us. And then donations that we do, these are things that members, if we have proceeds from basically Christmas baskets that one of our volunteers makes for us and sells to the public. And she donates 100% of that to us. So that's also an incredible revenue for us. Expenses, not much outside of any township facility. Utilities are getting close to 10,000 annually. In insurance premiums, again, are the number one, number two. We maintain our repairs, continuing to make sure we balance ourselves throughout the year. So the grant monies that we request essentially go to our reserve, and they account for the necessary projects that we've got coming in the future. Being proactive, we're looking forward into what we need to do to the hall. It is 75 years old, so there are some things that need upgrading. And Bill is going to talk about those necessary projects right now.
The application that I completed on behalf of our group in the fall, you may recall that I talked about a request for a longer term purpose and a shorter term purpose. The longer term purpose is to have a renovation done on the hall and replace the washrooms. The washrooms is a separate building that sometime in these last 75 years was added on. And I did have a contractor up there back in the fall with me, and there's no foundation. So if we're going to invest in making these washrooms accessible, we need to take the building off. We need to put a proper foundation on. We most likely will have to replace the septic. That's a question to Tim here, and weeping tiles. So it's a big deal. And I was trying to apply to the Ontario Trillium Foundation, and it's quite a process, to be honest. And we went to 5 contractors to possibly get a better chance, a professional estimate of what this would all cost. We really only could get a hold of one to come and do it, because I'm telling you, your business, you know that we have supply chain problems, we have labor shortages, we have this, we have that. But we did have one group come, and ironically, it was the construction company that completed in the last few years the washrooms over at the Centerton Hall. So that was good. It gave us an idea of what we're after in terms of the finished product. And they're not fancy. They're just able to bring things up to code. And speaking of code, we have to get our entrance brought up to code, but we're focusing long-term on the washrooms right now. At the end of the day, that estimate, which both Jay and I, we've been through personal renovations in the last few years, thought was a little on the high side, but it was $200,000. So you can see why we apply to you and we say this is long-term. And you can see why we've put some of our professional expertise at work with respect to investing in GICs. Fortunately, the rates on GICs are a little more comfortable to us and attractive to us today than they would have been a few years ago. But that's what we're having to do. So we're grateful to Hamilton Township. We trust whatever it is you come up with for us in these tough times. We understand that. We get it. We've been very fortunate the last few years. What we also want to do, though, in the short term is we want to upgrade our playground equipment. So we did that a few years ago. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what we've used your money for in the last few years. Playground of $4,000. You probably, some of you realized very quickly when you walked in one summer a few years ago, we painted the place. And that was all volunteer by our people, but still $1,500 in paint sort of thing. We replaced the windows with actually Mark's windows, who was a Harwood boy. And I had to laugh when he was there giving me the estimate, because he was walking around going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I said, what is it, Mark? He said, I used to come here and watch Smokey and the Bandit when the screen was up on stage and we as kids were there. So that was kind of interesting. But that was $8,200. And then we put blinds in because we do have a daycare, and that was important to us to keep the sun out on the kiddies during. A little plug for a magnificent carpenter in the area, Kelsey Fuller. He built those cupboards that we have now in our Jubilee room, and those guys and Sam Jacks, they donated their time. So our costs were about $1,500. We knew if we were going to come to you and say we want to build a new washroom, we better have an engineering study done. So we did that. Bruno Dobry over in Port Hope did that for us, and I think very competitively priced for $1,000. Finally, as we were completing the Ontario Trillium Foundation grants, we needed to get our books in a proper order. There wasn't that there was anything wrong with the numbers or anything, but you have to have a compatible format that these people who receive applications from other organizations can compare apples to apples in a short period of time. So we used Lynch, Rutherford, and Tozer over in Port Hope, and they did that very nicely for us. Ryan Polster, a Harwood boy, actually did the work. So that all adds up to just under $20,000 that we've done over the last few years with largely with help from this organization here. So going forward, our long-term goal is to do that renovation. When we will get it all done, who knows? But what we've decided to do is put our money at work as well, along with ourselves, to make some interest on it and help us along. To apply to Ontario Petroleum Foundation, which I've mentioned a couple of times, and I know Hamilton Township had good success with the Cold Spring Playground, so that was encouraging to us as well. And the other one that we've just made initial overtures to is the Canadian Tire Corporation for their Jumpstart program, because we are doing a playground, and that to me fits very nicely. So we're waiting to see how that all goes. So in a nutshell, the long-term goal is to renovate the washrooms and replace, and also the front entrance to bring it up to code, as Tim would remind me of. The shorter term, we were hoping we could get the playground, at least one or two pieces replaced. We've talked to two vendors that Hamilton Township have used both for different parks of yours. We're encouraged with what we hear. We've set aside some money. We just really have to make a decision on which vendor, and hopefully we can get that in by June. As Jay mentioned, we're in the beginning of 75th anniversary, and we're going to try and do it upright. We're going to have our breakfast first of every Saturday, but in addition to that, there'll be some special events. So I've said enough, except thank you. Thank you for your consideration. You've been very generous to us, and we are most willing to accept whatever it is this year that you think we're worthy to receive.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jay. Questions from council, comments? Bruce, Mark? Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one of the things that you did forget is the new kitchen that was put in, which was part of the funding that we got from the township.
You're correct.
So
Pardon me
just-
on that.
Yeah, so it's an ongoing.
Should know
thing that
that
goes
doing
on
the
it.
potatoes, or
Thank you.
shouldn't I? Thank you.
You've been called to task by the dishwasher, Bill.
Yeah.
You said it. I didn't.
I noted it, yes. Mark, question?
Yeah, I have to say you guys have done a wonderful job out there. I mean, it's nice to see that you have a plan in place and what you want to achieve. I guess a question maybe I'll throw at Trevor. Is there any advantage, Trevor, if they were to group in on some, when we're purchasing some playground equipment or going out to tender, would there be any advantage to them in doing that? They're only looking for a couple of pieces. Would that be of benefit to them? Sure. I just look at somebody coming, because they come from usually quite far away. So I mean, if they're doing work for us, it might be easy for them to. You can talk and. Just for food for thought anyway. I mean,
Well, that's a good
it's-
idea.
Councilor Lufsen, it's a great idea, and I want to put my 2 cents in and thank you to Trevor, because he's always there to bounce questions off of, and you know, having just gone through this exercise in Cold Springs and maybe Butley before that, and Baltimore before that, it helps, it flattens our learning curve, let's put it that way.
Sure.
Thanks for that suggestion.
My other thought is you're looking at playground equipment. How much are you looking at spending in the short term for that? I mean, if you got a figure in mind?
Well, interesting you asked the question. So one of the groups we spoke to a couple of weeks ago told us that we were going to have to take our existing ground down a foot. And I was going to call Bruce to see if he still has front-end loader to come over, but the second vendor who we dealt with from the Ottawa area told us since we were only replacing one piece of equipment, we may not have to do that. But the other thing we are going to do, and I think is worth mentioning here, is we have sort of a blank spot on our swing set, and the township here have gone ahead and had the foresight to do this. We're doing it in the response to somebody, and that is we have a child with autism in our neighborhood, and you have to have, you should have a special chair so that that child doesn't fall out. I mean, it's
Sure.
not that they're not supervised, but so to answer your question, I think we're probably going to be ending up spending in the vicinity of $10,000 to $15,000. Hopefully less. It's going to depend on that groundwork. kind of
Yes.
thing. By the
Yeah.
way, just one more thing. If we had to remove that groundwork, we were going to keep that ground because it costs $2,500 to have it tested before it's taken off the property.
It's outright. That's
Gonna
too bad.
recycle it.
I know everything costs so much, especially when it comes to playground equipment. It just amazes me.
It is. And it becomes obsolete and out of code too. That's the other issue.
Any follow-up, Mark?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question? In some ways, I might call you out a bit myself, Bill. Jay, I believe there's a breakfast on Saturday morning that you really haven't advertised that well here this morning.
We're not done yet.
Actually, Mayor, this signs are in the back of my truck. I gotta go do that next.
Yes, of course. We'll extend that invitation to everyone here for sure.
No deals though.
No deals. Well, we'll see what happens.
I don't know.
Thank you, gentlemen.
very
Thank you,
much.
thank you for your presentation. I know there's a lot of support around the front end of this room for Harwood Hall and a lot of big thank yous go to your group and all of the volunteers, both present and in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, it would be in order for a motion to receive the report for information. Could I have a mover, please? John, seconder, Mark, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Mayor, I have something I have to put up on the poster board in Barwood. And this is your inaugural newsletter. Would you autograph it for us? And we'll put it up?
I'm not sure I want to.
Anywhere's fine.
It's the best I can do, Bill. Moving on, item 9 on our agenda is our parks and facility usage. And I believe Trevor is going to come forward and provide us a report for information. Oh, one moment, Trevor. We got to check mark through a section here on the agenda that I shouldn't have. And that's dealing with 8.1, dealing with council minutes. And it's a special council budget meeting number 1, being January 19th of 2023. Prepared motion that the minutes of the January 19th, 2023 special council budget meeting be adopted. Do I have a mover? Moved by Larry, seconded by John. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Thank you. Carried. Trevor, back to yourself at item 9.1 on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Jib. Is that on? Yeah, so some of the requests that come out of the first budget meeting, I just did a report on, as you can see. I think the first thing that was the Beauty Community Center arena, the arena portion of it, and the usage of locals. It is a bit of a challenge to determine who's local and who's not, just in regards to the renters. So I've broken it down. Local organizations and groups that use it on average is 24 hours per week. These are all weekly hours. Minor hockey uses it for 13 hours. And as I spoke to at the last meeting in regards to, I didn't consider these non-residents because kids that live in the Bewdley Hamilton Township area is dictated where they play hockey on the OMHA rules. So they may go to Millbrook or they would play in either Northumberland, but a total of 13 hours per week are used between Millbrook and Northumberland minor hockey at the Bewdley Arena. And then non-resident groups, we get some use out of Peterborough and a little bit out of the Clarington area, and that would be 7 hours use for the Bewdley Arena. So before I move on to the Laurel Park, I can answer any questions on Bewdley.
Mark?
Just a couple, Trevor. I see the numbers are down a bit. Are we looking at the outcome in the future? I know it's hard to tell, but what are we looking at there? Are we Is there-
For usage?
Yeah.
So the reason the hours are down right now for usage is mainly the tournament use on Saturdays. Prior to COVID, we ran about 12 tournaments a year on, mainly on Saturdays. This year, I think it's 2 or 3 that we have
Down 4.
scheduled, so or 4, yeah, 4 tournaments. So it is down. We're starting to see that come back a bit this year. We didn't have any tournaments last year, so tournaments are just kind of coming back into, so hopefully that will grow the
And,
Saturdays.
and the Millbrook opening and so forth, has that affected some of these numbers? Or is
So the only, what's affected the Millbrook use is previously, we used to put our ice in for the start of September. They paid a premium for September. And they used that ice at that time. Since they built the new Millbrook Arena, they can now put their ice in earlier. So we've scaled back and we don't put our ice in until the 1st of October. So that month would, why you'd see decrease in usage is September.
Thank
But
you.
as I'd mentioned before, weekdays, everybody's looking for prime time between 6 and 9 o'clock and our Sundays are full.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this part of Trevor's report?
Next up was the Laurel Park playground and just, whether there was enough residents in the area that was looking for that park. And with Emily's help, we were able to get a survey online done. We delivered flyers on the Friday afternoon with a deadline of Wednesday. And it was 35, 36 of residents, but I think a couple more come in after that. Might have been total 38. We had one respondent that wasn't interested in the use of the park for that use as a playground, wanted to see something different. But the other 35 or 36 were in favor of the playground. We got a few other ideas out of it too as well. But yeah, they were in favor of the playground. And we did notice on our tour, there is a fair amount of kids. We're seeing a lot of basketball nets, hockey nets, things like that. Without actually seeing how many kids in there, there's still a fair amount of kids in the neighborhood. Questions on Laurel Park?
Good comment. I mean, I was surprised with the number of responses you've got in short periods. I mean, it was really good to see because I know I was the one that kind of questioned this. So it's
I'll give
Yeah.
credit to Emily for that one. She kind of
awesome job.
got the
doing it.
info out there. So thanks to her. Next, the old Camborne Schoolhouse.
Just a second, Trevor.
Sorry.
Do we have any other questions on that part of it at all? Okay,
The next one was the old Camborne Schoolhouse and the usage. Obviously, it's been closed for 2 years since COVID. On average, 2019, we looked at 144 rentals of that facility. At this year, when we did this document, we were at 57, but it is starting to increase for 2022, which we didn't open it until I believe it was May of 2022. So the numbers are down, but it is starting to come back. Just since I've written this report, we've now got another agreement with Early On. They're going to run their kids program out of there as well. So things are starting to pick up at Camborne Schoolhouse.
Trevor, did you say 144 for 19?
Yes.
That's substantially more than I would have ever expected. Okay, great, thanks. Questions for Trevor on this part? Larry, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Trevor, one of the things that we found with the advisory council is that the old Camborne Schoolhouse was really a sought after location prior to COVID because of its aesthetics and it's a little cheaper than the other halls. But I think there's a heritage aspect to it that people love that place. And I think there's plans to maybe do some fixing up around the outside of it. So is that built into your plan now?
So the reason this come up at the last budget meeting is the long-term planning of it. And we're looking at 2024 to budget for the painting of it
Oh,
because of it is starting to deteriorate. We have done some things this year we had to do some repairs to the front step. We put a hand railing on it this year. But other than that, and being a heritage building, I'm sure, we can look at some sort of funding for the painting as well.
great, thank you.
John,
Thank you, Mayor Jim. Just a question about the playground equipment. When's the expiry date on that? Because you mentioned about the early on education being there and I kind of thinking, oh, here we go with playground equipment.
So right now it is all to code, but then it's kind of the last one on the list. It's not that bad, but it has been there. I forget, I don't have the exact date of when it went in. But it is fine right now. But once Laurel Park is the next playground on our hit list, and then it would start again with Old Camborne Schoolhouse, but we'll get a few more years out of that one.
Mark,
Just a quick question. If your programmer becomes available, will they be able to use this facility for possible programming and so forth within?
Yes, yeah, that would be the plan, is that programmer would be providing programming across the township. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you.
I know there's people in this room that have gone to school there, so some of us have memories. Thanks for looking after the.
Was it the
building,
same
Trevor.
playground equipment?
No. No. Mark, would you have gone there by chance? No, well, no, I certainly did. Yeah. Several stories come from that era too. Trevor, anything else then for council?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Thank you, Trevor. Prepared motion again, the council receives Parks Report 2023-01, Parks Facility Usage for Information. Could I have a mover, please, John, seconded by Bruce? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Lucas, Public Works and Infrastructure 2023-02 report, standby generators. The floor is yours, please, Lucas.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. As per the budget meeting, or the first budget meeting a few weeks back, Council did ask to have staff come back with a generator report detailing some of the maintenance that has been done, some of the information of the years, ages, size. And then part of that whole process on this report is actually a capital forecast for replacement of these generators. So I think there's lots of information in that report, and I am here to answer any questions if there is any.
Thank you, Lucas. Questions? Comment, please, John.
Thank you to you, Mayor Jim. It's a very good report. Thank you very much for that. I was unaware of, we had so many generators in the municipality and even standby generators, and it's nice to know that they're well equipped. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anything else? As you would expect, Lucas, I have questions and comments. I'm sure you're prepared. I will echo what John said. Great report, a lot of information, very concise, very much appreciated to all of those who worked on it. And I presume there was more than
And
yourself.
I will pass on, there was everybody, almost all senior management, including Arthur, had comments on it.
Yeah, thank you to all. There are a couple components of that are very minor in nature that maybe need to be fine tuned, but I think they're irrelevant for the topic today. There is one topic that I think needs to be reflected on that we may very well need to take action on in a possible different direction than my understanding of the report at present. And that is actually the repeater tower generator and system there. Your report is very concise. I think possibly it needs a second layer of review and maybe consideration from a budget perspective. I have an understanding that the generator, the portable generator that stays in place there did fail, and that another portable generator was borrowed through the roads department from the fire department to be in place. I acknowledge that there are mechanical components of that report, and there's also operational components of that report that are reflected of that system. My question really is, should we look at another layer of review and develop an action plan? That in my mind, that system there, or the failure of that system there, being the repeater tower, shuts down more than I feel comfortable with. So my question really is, can we look at anything other than what's in the present report to improve our system that's there today? And I throw that out at you. I know there's really no money scheduled in the future business plan, but we do have a little reserve today that's in place. So that's the nature of my question in respect to improvements. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Jib, I think there's three kind of avenues that we need to discuss there. First and foremost is the discussions have been started again with the Coast Guard. As you're aware, at the time of placement there was no interest from the Coast Guard in us using either their facility or their generator to house our current equipment or use their generator. So we have started that discussion with them again to see if it would be possible to tap into their existing generator. Second to that, that tower is an integral part of the hopeful go live process that'll happen in 2023 for the whole county, of which that will be one of the towers that'll be looped into the system. And the hope is that that will become a overall county responsibility for everyone. So each one of those sites would have county components to it. So that's been brought forward through the county fire chiefs to go in front of that overall plan. And the last and final is obviously at our level as a municipality, in the upgrades that are going to happen today, this year, there's also probably a need for a little more real estate there. In that if we have to, we may have to put a second concrete building or stack a set of concrete buildings to get that equipment there, at which time we would look at that costing and incorporate the generator at that time.
A lot of information in your response. Thank you. From a budget perspective that we're moving through the process of right now, what do we need to do differently for consideration?
So to the best of my knowledge, there's nothing that's current in the budget at this time to make moves on the last part being the most expensive or costing the municipality. So the first two would be essentially a zero cost of those three options. The third, there's been nothing that I know of that's in our current budget.
Should we be looking at potential of option 3 if 1 and 2 aren't materialized?
So we can look at option 3. Obviously, it would be a capital purchase. We did receive quotes from Summers Generators, where I think originally these generators were purchased from in 1999. They range from about $30,000 to $100,000. I did reach out to the Coast Guard and they have the same answer. Same guy is still there at the Coast Guard, that they do not support us having power from their generator, but they would be willing to entertain a revision of the lease agreement to have a secondary or our own standby generator to power the repeater. There is a very little power that is needed for the repeater. There is talk about, is there a possibility of putting in a bigger battery backup that will maybe last for 72 hours, but we are in the process looking at it through our operating budget. But obviously, if there is a significant cost to have a additional fail-safe measure, then we might have to bring a report back to council at a later time, specifically to the Cold Springs Tower.
And that would be potentially coming from reserves and outside of the process for tax levy input today.
To you, Mr. Mayor, if it is a capital project, it will be funded from the general reserve, the generator reserve. So it will not impact tax levy.
Thank you. Thank you. One question that is of extreme concern to me. I think pretty well everybody knows that I have a history with these generators back through before day one. as a result of that, I have questioned, and as I've used lately, I have preached on these generators. And in your report, in the report, there's a section that deals with maintenance monitoring. We have gone through a process repeatedly. I mean, I could list a half a dozen names of people, some of which are still with our organization, that were handed the responsibility on a monthly basis to review. Circumstances change, people change, workloads change. I appreciate that. However, the end result is that what we think we have under control and what now is in your report to have under control as far as monthly reviews are concerned is something I've heard over and over. I like what's in the report. I support what's in the report, but I'm concerned about it falling off the edge of the table again. What, and it doesn't have to be today, I'll throw it out as a question that can be back to coordinators or back through other reports. What can we have in place to ensure that it doesn't fall off the edge of the table again? And that can be a rhetorical question right now if everybody wishes, but that's a concern I have because of history and the repeat circumstances that materialize far too frequently in my point of view.
So we can, obviously, we are moving forward for what is in the report. And then as coordinators meet monthly, we can update coordinators and through that process to make sure we are fulfilling the duties of the monthly inspections as well as the semi-annual inspections.
At one point in time, there was to be, and it existed for a while, a log book of review information. Could staff look at some type of documentation so that we can look at it, and, or I don't mean council necessarily, but so that it could be reviewed to ensure that it's being done?
The log books have already been created, so we're moving forward with that process.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Thank you. Again, a motion that council receives report Public Works and Infrastructure 2023-02 Hamilton Township standby generators for information. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Mark, second by Larry. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Corporate Services. Good morning, Nezra. Next item on our agenda is 2023-04, being the 2023 second draft operating and capital budget. And Nezra, the floor is yours until which time we need a break.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Staff is recommending that council approve the 2023 draft operating budget for the Township of Hamilton and Building Department. At the first special budget meeting, which was held on January 19th of this year, staff proposed a 6.6% tax rate increase, factoring in the assessment growth of approximately 0.9%. The net levy increase was for 5.7%. At this first special budget meeting, a request was presented on behalf of the Friends of the Hardwood Waterfront for considering of funding within the 2023 budget for improvement of the waterfront. Council actually referred this to the manager of parks and facilities, and staff is now proposing an increase of $3,000 to the budget in order to do additional groundskeeping work at the waterfront. I do want to mention that the scope of this particular project is identified or is written in detail in the budget package, which is on page 102. After incorporating the $3,000 increase in the budget, staff is now proposing 6.7% tax levy increase, factoring in the assessment growth of approximately 0.9% as provided by MPAC. The net levy increase for 2023 is 5.8%. This equates to, for an average household, annual increase of $99 or monthly increase of approximately $8.25. I'd like to mention that we are cognizant of the economy and its impact on our residents. Factors such as inflation, price increase, it's impacting both the residents and the township as well. On page 27 and 28 of the budget package, which is part of the appendix in the staff report, I have identified factors which are impacting 2023 budget. Just to name a few, CPI is at 6.9%. CLA negotiation, which was completed in 2022, that's incorporated in the budget. There's been a significant increase in fuel price, and that's incorporated in the budget. OMERS, in the past, we used to offer OMERS to full-time employees. Now we are required to offer OMERS to non-full-time employees starting from 2023, and that's incorporated in the budget. We are requesting 2 new positions, planner and a recreation programmer / event developer. That's included in the budget. There's also a requirement from TSSA, Technical Standard and Safety Authority, to set aside approximately $45,000 each year for the next 4 years to ensure that we have enough funding to replace the chiller in 2026 or by 2026, and that's reflected in the budget. Even after incorporating all these items that I've just mentioned within the budget, we are proposing a budget increase less than CPI, and that's because we have looked into every avenue, every efficiencies that we can find in order to keep the budget as it is. On page 25 of the budget package, and I'll go through the budget package, but I just want to give you a synopsis. On page 25 of the budget package, I did identify implication of minimal tax levy increase. Some of the risks are a potential deficit. As you all know, as per the Municipal Act, municipalities are not allowed to have deficit. If there is a deficit, we need to fund it either from reserve, and in other words, depleting the reserve, or potentially depleting the reserve, or increase tax rate the year after in order to fill the gap. Another risk of minimal tax levy increase is reduction in service level. I've talked about the budget survey that we have done for 2023 budget process, and I've presented that to council at the first special budget meeting on January 19th. Majority of the respondents are not in favor of service level reduction. Majority of the respondents did agree to one statement, and that is that fact that township is responsive to its citizens' needs, maintain its facilities well, and delivers service at a cost which is effective and efficient. Before I move into the budget package and get into the numbers, I do want to mention something regarding township's property tax rate. If you compare township's residential property tax rate with neighboring municipalities, you will see that ours is actually one of the lowest. This alone shows that we do take the budget process very seriously, and we take every possible step and look at every avenue possible in order to ensure that the levy is low. With your permission, Mr. Mayor, I would now like to move to the budget package itself, which is part of the Appendix A of the staff report. And I will start from page 27.
Please.
As I have mentioned, at the first special budget meeting, staff proposed a budget increase of 6.6%. And now we are requesting an increase of $3,000 for the additional groundskeeping work at the Harwood Waterfront. And that takes the budget increase to 6.7%. If you factor in the assessment growth of approximately 0.9%, that's a net levy increase of 5.8%. Any question on this page? I do want to say that in terms of the additional funding that we need for the grants keeping, we do have a business enhancement sheet. We will go through that when I go through the departmental budget presentation. Any question on page 27? If not, I will move to page 28, please. Page 28 is exactly identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting, except for the fact that I've added $3,000 for the additional groundskeeping work that we are going to be, we are proposing to do. Any question on this page? If not, I would like to move to page 31. This is the financial outlook for the next 3 years, 24 to 26. I do want to mention that when we prepare financial outlook, these are based on assumptions or information that we have available right now. It is possible that when I do actually start presenting 2024, 25, or 26 budget, then the percentage increase might be slightly different from what we have right now, because what I'm proposing right now or showing right now, it's based on information that's available right now. The assumptions are identified on this page. If there is any changes from this assumption, I will identify that to the council when I present those years' budget. Any question on this? If not, I would move to page 33 of the budget package, which is the building department's budget. As you all know, consolidated budget that I've presented, that does not include building department's budget. Building department is a self-sufficient department, and I always exclude that from the consolidated budget that I have presented. I will go through this again when I go through the departmental budget, but I just wanted to present it to everyone else, saying that this is not part of the consolidated budget and it does not impact tax rate at all. This is identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I will move to page 34 and 35, which is the operating budget by department. Again, these two pages are identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting, except for on page 35, parks and facilities budget increased by $3,000 because of the additional groundskeeping at the waterfront. Any question on these two pages? If not, I would like to move to page 37 and 38, which is the reserve fund balances that we are projecting for 2023, assuming that whatever we are presenting today will be approved by council. If you look at the 2023 projected year-end balances, you will see that all our reserve and reserve funds are in a surplus position, except for the roads, vehicle, and equipment reserve. As I have mentioned earlier, yes, we are projecting a deficit. However, by 2024, there will be a surplus in that reserve. So we are in good shape when it comes to reserve and reserve funds.
Nazrat, the 2023 budget asks from roads vehicle.
That's correct.
We have a couple coming from roads reserve.
That's right.
When we look at these numbers on page 37, do they reflect that there's an approval of those roads equipments already and that money's taken out of there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. So if you look at the second last column, you will see $445,000 taking away from the reserve, roads vehicle reserve. That's the capital budget that we are requesting for 2023. So if there is any kind of variation in terms of the approval, that amount will change.
Thank you. John?
Through you, Mayor Jib. With that same thought in mind, what's the projection for the reserves in 2024 for Public Works?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that will be on page page 156, and based on what we have, based on the projection, we are expecting a surplus of 205,000.
Can we stay there for a second? And that's with a contribution of how much in 2023 and 2024?
For 2023, the contribution is $320,000. That's reflected in the budget right now. And 2024, we are proposing to increase that contribution by $20,000, which takes it to $340,000. But that's for 2024.
I said under my breath, wow, what a big bunch of numbers here. Thank you, Najat.
Any more question on these two pages? If not, I will start getting into departmental budget. I would ask everyone to go to page 49, please. This is the general government's budget summary. This is identical to what I had presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I would like to move to page 50 of the package. This is the first part of the pressure sheets. Again, no change from what I have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I would like to move to page 51 of this package. This page is also identical to what I presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? I would like to now move to the Planning and Development Departmental budget, and I would request Tim Geronimus, the Manager of Development Service, to help me out with this side. If I can take everyone to page 53 of the package. This is identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I will move to page 54 of this package. Again, it is identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? I'd like to move to page 55 of this package, which is again identical to what I've presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page?
Can I just ask, where are we with their planner now as far as the process and
Currently, it's still posted. We haven't received any qualified applicants.
the closing date is? Or do we have one now? Next Friday? Okay, thank you.
Larry, please.
So as I understand, it's going to be a very difficult situation, not just for us, but everybody. Is there any plan in place to offset that?
Sorry, is your question to offset the fact that we don't have a
Yes.
planner here?
Yes.
So to answer that, we're currently using Connie. She's helping us do some research associated to the high priority tasks that we have identified on the planning department project justification sheet. But we're searching, we're going to continue to search and do the best we can with what we have currently to make sure we don't fall behind on those tasks.
And what is Connie's qualifications to provide us that service?
Service would be primarily research, not decision-making, not planning expertise. It's more giving us a background on these items, and then our development team works together on finding and making decisions, finding the solutions and decisions. So
Thank you.
thanks, Larry.
For some that don't know Connie, she's been involved with municipal life and planning departments for 40 years. A lot of history she comes with her.
Any more question on this page?
Bruce?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. If we do hire a planner, we will not need that $35,000.
Anything further? Deborah?
If not, I will move to building department's budget, which is page 62 of the package, please. This is identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I will move to page 63 of the package. Again, it is identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I will move to bylaw budget, which is page 66 of the package. This is identical to what I presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? I'd like to move to page 67 of the package. Again, identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page?
Just one question through you, Mayor Jib. That contract for the policing, the bylaw through the policing service, that's only 1-year contract for 2023?
Sorry, John, which section are you referring to? We had a pilot program with the contracted position with Cobourg Police for the first year this past year. We'd be hoping to make some improvements on that parking program. Something else that we'd be looking into with this reallocation is potentially having bylaw enforcement improvements to things like the pool enclosure pilot project or zoning bylaw enforcement and other items that aren't associated to Cobourg Police. So they can, right now, our contract with them is specifically for parking.
For parking, okay. Thank you. And just 1 year.
That was just 1 year.
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Any question on bylaws operating budget? If not, I'd like to move to fire department's budget. I would request Mike Robinson, the acting fire chief, to help me with that. If I can request everyone to move to page 73 of this package, which is the fire department's budget, identical to what we have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I'd like to move to page 74 of the package, identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on page 74? If not, I would like to.
Through your Mayor Jib, your burn permits, is there going to be a campaign going out to the public to make them aware that they should be purchasing their burn permits for this year?
So a little bit of history on those, so Mayor Jib, that is not a renewal at the first of the year. It's actually a 12-month. So if you renew in May, it becomes due again in May. And through our council coordinators and actually through Deputy Mayor, it was identified to come up with a process. There's actually an alerting process now that we send an email to each person. So if they have not renewed their permit at the time that it's due, a reminder is sent.
Very
So
good.
that's the campaign that we have at this time.
Good. Thank you very much.
If I might ask a question, it's in keeping with the hard to predict comment under the fire calls recovering. I understand the comment. Would you give our current process a positive response? Are we doing pretty well with that?
Are you speaking specific to burn permits or overall revenue?
Overall revenue, vehicle accidents, recoveries, and that sort of thing.
So there's two items that are in there. One, if you remember, is the process through a third-party company, Fire Marquee. That's specific to structure fires where we task them, they take our information and they go back through the insurance company and back through the insurance provisions in the actual coverages. And if we're successful in obtaining monies through that process, they take 30% of that for their services. If we are unsuccessful through that process, there is no fee, there's no retainer. The second process of that is an internal process that we use Nusrat's team for, and that is where we charge back through the insurance company for our responses on the highways. And that process is reflected into the revenues that you see there. So yes, to the process.
Thank you. Did that generate any other follow-up questions? Thank you.
I'd like to request everyone to move to page 75 of this package, identical to what we have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this?
Just want to bring one thing to light that's not reflected here. We do have 4 apparatus that by the end of this year will be surplus, 2 small vehicles, 2 large, once we get the additional pieces in play. The market at this time that I've been watching is favorable, particularly for the large vehicles. So I'm hopeful that we will see by the end of the year a significant, I'll want to limit and say at least $100,000 that'll be sent back into that reserve through the sale of surplus asset.
Thank you, Mike. Just for the benefit of council members, could you give a very quick, brief overview of what those small and large vehicles would actually be?
So on the large format, we had the pumper tanker that was involved in our accident earlier in 22. That will be back here within the next few weeks. That will be placed back in Station 3. And the current pumper that is in there doing its job, which had been retired but not removed from the fleet, was brought back in as a part of the accident. That will be one of them. The second piece will actually be the tanker that sits at Station 2. The new vehicle, pumper tanker, is being placed at Station 1 in Bewdley. The current tanker that's in Bewdley will be moved to Station 2 in Baltimore, and the current tanker that's in Baltimore will be surplused. And then if you remember in the small vehicle format, we bought 2 vehicles about 5 or 6 years ago to patch over for what we called the runabouts. That is the Yukon that was bought used and the Dodge Journey that was bought used. So those are the 2 small vehicles.
Thank you. That Dodge Journey's been tried to get rid of once before?
Correct. There was a problem, mechanical problem, which has been solved, so we'll put it back up on the auction block.
Thank you, Wayne.
Any more question on fire operating budget? If not, I'll move into policing. This is the police budget that you have in front of you, page 76. Any question on that? This is identical to what we have presented at the first special budget meeting. If
Any question?
If I may, thank you, through Mr. Mayor. The OPP budget went up last year and now it's going down this year, right? People have a concern that we're not getting the coverage that we should be getting. And I wonder if there's been a reduction in service, or is there the same services we're getting year over year? And our members from the Police Service Board could comment on that.
Anyone have an option to answer here? Are there any thoughts? Maybe something we could review? Excuse me.
Certainly. Through you, Mayor Jib, the Police Services Board provides service, as you know, contractually through the OPP as our municipal department. They provide reports and updates on the types of services, the type of calls they respond to. And there's a base fee that's factored in for all municipalities. They provide us an annual calculation of that, and that does show the types of responses that occur and the nature, in other words, the number and the nature of those responses. I don't have that actual report in front of me, but it's provided periodically through the minutes of the Police Services Board. I'm not aware of any substantial change one way or the other that's been flagged for our attention, but that information is available and we could provide a follow-up to you through Protective Services to ensure that all council is aware of the type of services, the type of calls, and the good sort of follow-up service that they do provide, and when and where that happens.
Thank you, Arthur, for that. But I think what the crux of the thing is that our communities, when Cobourg Police were here doing the parking, felt very safe because of the visibility of the cruisers that we're going through. And the comment I get is that we spend all this money on policing, but we hardly ever see a police car. Some people never see a police car. Now, mind you, I have the highest regard and appreciation for the OPP, fabulous police service. But understanding that I believe we only have 2.5 cruisers on the road at any given time, albeit if there is an incident and there's a call, we have full coverage within minutes. But I think from a community policing standpoint, we should be looking at how we can maybe get some more involvement with the police within our communities, the settlement areas. This is just the comments that I'm getting from people out there, and maybe we can respond to that through Police Service Board. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mark, I think your hand actually went up first.
But that's okay. I mean, I'm glad Larry spoke first because I'd like to address some of his concerns. I can only say that the Police Service Board has been very open, and they do have opportunity for ratepayers to come in and voice their opinions and so forth. And I've sat on the board for the last 4 years, and it was quite a great experience for myself in seeing that our crime rate within our municipality is very, very low. Our anytime we have issue, and especially speeding and so forth, the Police Service Board has always taken a front seat in getting that resolved and so forth. And I'm sure you can remember last year we had that blitz on during, there was about 3 months there that we had policing out in full force and making sure, and we even paid extra to do that. So not only do we do the advertising, but we had extra officers and so forth looking after the speeds and so forth throughout our municipality, because there was some high speed incidents within, and unfortunately they happened. But on the good side of that, they're few and far between. It seems to be that there's very few people that are doing that, but the ones that are excessive. And as I mentioned, the Police Service Board did take take a look at that, and they did respond to that, and the OPP were very, very good to work with in helping and making that possible. If we want more presence, we pay more dollars. And right now, with the numbers we have and the number, I'm sure John and Bruce have both seen, and I know they're fairly new, but I'm sure when they see those numbers come in, they're fairly low. They're probably some of the lowest within the province, and we've been noted to being one of the safest communities within the province. So it's very hard to justify spending more money when we're not having any real issues and very few complaints.
Just responding. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Responding to Mark, Councillor Lufshin, is that I appreciate that totally. And I think when we ask questions like this, we bring these answers forward so that people can understand that. I think the issue is that we need to communicate out to our residents of what we're doing from policing standpoint. And yes, I think, Mark, your comment about being the safest place to live, it wasn't just the province, it was, we were the 5th safest place to live in Canada. So in turn, I think our residents can feel comfortable in the fact that we have safe communities, well policed, and doing a great job. And thank you very much, Mark, for your comments.
There will be a future newsletter going out from the township. I wonder, could we have a bit of good news information and statistical information from our police service group? Get into that next newsletter that goes into every household.
One thing I did forget, the chair generally comes forward and does a presentation to council. I'm not sure when the last presentation was. I don't think we had one in December, did we? No, and we have a new chair now, so, or we'll have a new chair, so maybe that could be done early in this year, and perhaps that would help alleviate some things too.
Sounds like there's a couple of potential opportunities for sharing information. Bruce, I believe you were probably next.
Being relatively new in the police service board, I don't know much history, but I would have to say that the meetings that I've attended so far, and like the OPP seems tremendously responsible. If we targeted area or suggested there's something that they seem more than willing to have more presence there. I think if the people that Larry talking about must not live on County Road 9, because there's lots of police presence on there now, sometimes too much, I must say, from my personal experience. But the other thing is that back before Christmas, I recognized that there was a problem at Plainville School with traffic and traffic control. And I talked to the mayor and I actually spoke to the principal. And since that time, there has definitely been an increased presence of OPP. Very often at the bus time, there'll be a car sitting in that corner. So I think to Larry, I would say if these people aren't seeing police, then that's a good thing because there's not a problem there. Because I believe where there's a problem, they are, and I think they're responding to that. And the last police services board meeting, not the one we just had, but the one before that, he actually said that he had ticketed a person at Plainville School for doing a U-turn because that's one of the big problems there. So they're there, and I think we get good value for that service, and maybe we just needed to communicate a little bit.
Thank you. Bruce. I recognize John Arthur did want to speak if that's still the way.
Through you, Mayor Jib, just following up on your comment about the newsletter, we can also look at other social media or website information we could do in the interim before that mailing occurs later this year. So in support of ensuring good communication in the community.
Thank you. Just because of circumstances, I realized that I had several ratepayers reach out to me and ask that when we are speaking to project their voices right into our microphones. I think they excluded me from that request, but maybe we can reflect on that. John, please.
I'll try my best, Mayor Jib. I appreciate everybody's opinions. I think what I have to look at here, and I think what Larry and everybody's alluded to, and also Bruce, is the fact that I don't think the minutes of the police service board reflect what amount of work they actually do out here and the stats that do come forward. If we could possibly the next board meeting, I'll bring that up and see what we can actually bring out to the public. If we can bring those out, I think they should be included in the monthly report. So therefore they read them online, that they've been out doing patrols, how many vehicles they stopped, how many complaints, et cetera. So I'll have a look into that next time at the board meeting. At least Bruce and I can do that.
Thank you, everyone. Mike, you wanted to
Through
provide
you, Mayor
comment?
Jib, I have a different side maybe than that might help with Larry's ask. Definitely through COVID, our time spent in the community for any protective services has definitely been lessened. We had some very active programs where we were doing joint effort, and you'll be familiar with one, Mayor Jib, and Safe Communities. And that group has somewhat been disbanded, due to many reasons. But I think as we move forward with things like open houses, community safety days, involvement with the fire department, whether it's the kids camp or whatever, we've always invited the community policing side. And perhaps that could be a reflection of what people are also missing, not just the enforcement side, but the proactive side. And I do know from the standpoint of Northumberland, there's at least 2 officers, and that is their sole purpose. One social media and one is community policing. So should we want those, should we be hosting avenues, should we want that? I definitely know they support us and have in the past. And I think that's something we could get going in a proactive manner.
Thank you, Mike. All good conversation. Thank you, everyone. Nezrat, if you remember where we are, we're coming back to you.
To you, Mr. Mayor, if we can go to page 77, please. It is identical to what we have presented at the first special budget meeting. Is there any question on this? If not, I'll move to page 79, which is the budget for Police Service Board. There is no increase to this budget. And again, this is identical to what was presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this? If not, I will move to GRCA's budget. This budget, sorry, page 81, please. This budget was actually pre-approved by council on December 13th, 2022. And this is identical to what was presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I'll move to page 82. Again, this budget has been pre-approved by council in December. Any question on this page? If not, I will move to Animal Services budget, which is 84. This is identical to what was presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I'll move to the pressure sheet, which is page 85, which is identical to what we have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I will move to Public Works Department's operating budget, and I will request Lucas Kelly, Manager of Roads Operation, to help me out with this.
I think there's probably a few in the room would think this would be a good time to take a 5-minute break. Could we have a motion for a 5-minute recess, please? Moved by John, seconded by Larry. All those in favor, carried. Thank you. Meeting back to order at 11:38. Thank you, everyone. Emily, are we live again? Thank you. Nazrat, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can request everyone to go to page 89 of the package. This is the Public Works operating budget. It is identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I will move to page 90, which is the pressure sheet for the Public Works budget. Again, identical to what we have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I will move to page 91, the second part of the pressure sheet. Again, identical to what I have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page?
Nazrat, just for clarity, and I know you've shared it with us several times before, but it's in relationship to the tree removal and those in and out numbers, if you would, just for clarity. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In 2021, the budget for tree removal was $35,000. In 2022, we increased the tree removal budget by $80,000. That additional $80,000 were funded from the roads reserve. As a result, there was no impact to tax rate. At that time, during 2022 budget deliberation, we did mention to council that we will be removing that additional $80,000, which was 100% funded from reserve, from the budget in 2023, which we did for 2023. Now we're requesting an additional $25,000 for the tree removal expenditure line. That takes the budget to $60,000. So that's $35,000, which was what we had in the past, plus $25,000 that we're requesting now. That takes the budget for tree removal in 2023 to $60,000. That additional $25,000 we are proposing to be funded from tax rate.
Previously, we took money from reserve to fund this, did we not?
To you, Mr. Mayor, that $80,000 increase that we did in 2022, that $80,000 was funded from reserve, but the original $35,000 have been always be funded from tax rate.
I'm not suggesting it's a good idea, but could we look at an alternate funding source for that 25,000? In other words, could it come from reserves if there was any thoughts that we wanted it to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the reserve that we will, if we fund that additional $25,000 from reserve, that reserve that we are going to be using is the road reserve, and it does have sufficient surplus. However, I do have to mention to council that if we do fund that $25,000 from reserve in 2023, tax rate will be impacted in 2024 because we can't continuously fund this from reserve because it's an ongoing expenditure.
Thank you. Any questions or comments here? Bruce?
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, tree removal is what? Brush on the sides of the road?
So this specific line item is for contracted out tree removal work. So that is regarding utility lines or dangerous trees leaning towards accessory buildings, somebody's house, somebody's trailer. So this is for tree removal where our staff cannot have or do not have the ability to take down. So that would be third party contracted out for complete tree removal.
But it's on private property?
No, it's on municipal
on
right
municipal.
away. Yes.
Thank you.
Lucas, just because some of us here at the table are new, Lucas, could you just give us a bit of an overview of how many, I guess, ash trees or others that actually are gonna have to deal with here at some point in time?
So during 2023 budget deliberations, it was discussed about many trees within our road allowances, including ash trees, but there are also other problematic trees within the township. Council at that time, or staff proposed increase of $80,000, anticipating that would do a lot of our tree removal. As per my budget enhancement sheet or in the achievements, I believe there was, I think, 360 some trees I think we removed, contracted out. During that time, we continue to do our tree review, and our inventory is sitting at approximately 1,600 additional trees that are still labeled for removal. So there is still additional ash trees. There could be some elm, maple, but stuff that we just don't have the ability to take down because they are within a hydro line, utility line, or leaning the wrong direction.
Thanks, Lucas. And they're deteriorating every month we turn around, aren't they?
They are.
Thanks. Any follow-up questions or comments?
If not, we would move to Parks and Facilities Department's operating budget, and I will request Trevor Clapperton, Manager of Parks and Facilities, to help me out with this. If we can move to page 95 of the budget package, please. This page is identical to what we presented at the first special budget meeting, except for the $3,000 that we have added because of the additional work that we have to do for groundskeeping at Hardwood Waterfront. I'm actually going to be requesting Trevor to speak on that a little bit. It is part of the business enhancement sheet, and you can see that on page 109.
Thank you, Nazrat. So after the Harvard Waterfront Group's presentation, I did review some of the legalities involved in what could be done with the shoreline at the Harvard Waterfront and the request for dedicated removal of the weeds out of the beach. So what I'm recommending is that $3,000 go into the operating budget. And from that, we can use that to do some of the stabilization of the river, or sorry, the lake in front of the washroom area that's starting to erode. Would just be some riprap stone that would be placed in there on some geotextile, and then placing sand on the beach to enhance that. Since the paving's been done last year, I feel that we have the water problem resolved that was eroding it before. So now once we put that sand on the beach, it should stay there in place. And then the other ones was the weed removal itself. And that's something that we do. We don't have a dedicated time or a dedicated amount days that we do it, but would be more just internally ensuring that we remove them 2 days a week, whether 2 afternoons, whatever works into our schedule, and make sure that's dedicated for our staff to do that. I did, when I spoke to the Trent Severn Waterway, that removal of weeds can't begin until July 1st. You need a special permit to do it prior to that, which is somewhat of an issue, but we at least keep the beach clean, and then from July 1st on, remove weeds out of the water at that point.
Questions on this component? John?
Just one through you, Mayor Jib. Is there not a program coming to fruition where the government's going to fund money for different shorelines and different lakes, and they named Rice Lake as one of the places they're going to attribute money to for along the shorelines?
Was that through, which one was that through?
I think it was most recent, was it not?
I did get an email recently about something. I haven't had an opportunity to look into it. Sometimes there is programs, and the other one we can work through is the GRCA, because that's where a lot of the permitting would come from as well. And sometimes they have, they don't provide the grants themselves, but help you with finding which grants to do shoreline stabilization.
I was the one that sent you that information, but I was hoping you had read it, but I was hoping you'd
I
help
was
me out today.
somewhere
but- But anyways, yeah, there is a place card in there for Rice Lake Shoreline,
Yeah.
so it may be an advantage there to see if we can get some kind of grants or money from them, so.
Any other questions? Trevor, just a question for myself. The ask for 3,000 is primarily for materials, I take it, is it?
Yeah, so any work that at this point that we can do would be, and obviously I'd have to look to my friends at the Public Works Department for some assistance and trucking and things like that, but it would be done in-house. If we're doing some stabilization over the beach, it may be the rental of a small equipment to do that. And there is also some costs with the with permitting as well.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. Nazrat, please.
There's no more question on page 95. I'd like to move to 96, please. Page 96 is identical to what we presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I'll move to page 97. This is identical to what we presented at the first special budget meeting, except for the groundskeeping that we're requesting $3,000 additional extra for, and I've highlighted that in green. Is there any question on this page? If not, I will move to library's budget, page 107, please. This is identical to what we presented at the special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I'd like to move to page 108, which again is identical to what we have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I'd like to move to page 110, which is the community grant budget. This is identical to what we presented at the special budget meeting. I did mention that on this page, we assume that the council community grant will be flatlined, meaning we currently have a budget of $22,000. There is request for additional $9,500 that has not been incorporated in the budget, and I'll go through that in detail soon. But this page assumes that we are going to be flatlining community service grant budget. Any question on this page? If not, I'd like to move to page 111. This is identical to the package, the budget that was presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not, I would move to page 112. Again, it is identical to what we have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? I would like to now move to page 113, and this is the council grant. We have a budget of, well, 2022, we had a budget of $22,000. Page 113, please. So in 2022, we had a budget of $22,000. As I've said, in my budget calculation for 2023, I am flatlining it. I am seeking council's direction on them, on exactly how much we will be transferring to each organizations. But we have gone through the request. Harwood Hall is requesting $15,000. That's an increase of $5,000. Gorse Landing is requesting $1,500. I do want to mention to council that in 2023, they received $3,500. In 2022, they did not request for any funding. And the understanding was that they would be coming back the year after, which is 2023, to request for funding. Community Care is requesting $10,000, which is an increase of $1,000 from previous year. Bethlehem Walk is requesting $1,500, which is an increase of $500 from previous years. Royal Legion is requesting $1,500. They have not requested anything in 2022. They are requesting this $1,500 for the 3 flagpoles. The initial cost or initial request was for $2,500. Police Service Board donated $1,000, and that leaves with $1,500 request. We are seeking direction from council for the donation.
Nezra, just for clarity, the numbers that you have used in the budget process thus far for these various locations are what again? Just the specific numbers, 7,000 for Harwood Hall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the budget amount that I have incorporated in the budget process is $22,000 for all grant.
Got that. And the breakdown would be?
So when Hardwood Hall received $10,000 in 2022, there was a discussion at that time at the meeting that we will go back to 2021 amount. The reason why Hardwood Hall got a significant increase in 2022, it was because Gorse Landing did not request for funds. So we did not increase the overall budget. It still remained at $22,000. We just gave savings from Gorse Landing to Hardwood Hall, approximately $3,000 to Hardwood Hall and $500 to Community Care. What council at that time said is 2023, we may go back to $7,000 for Hardwood Hall, Gorse Landing, based on their request, $1,500. Community Care, I would go back to $9,000, Bethlehem Walk, $1,000, and Royal Legion at $1,500. So again, Harwood Hall, 7,000, Gorse Landing, 1,500, Community Care, 9,000, Bethlehem Walk, 1,000, and Royal Legion, 1,500. That will ensure that the budget remains as it is. And again, this is just an option based on the discussions we had in the past.
Thank you. Questions, comments, John?
Just a comment. I believe that's the correct calculation that I come up with as well. I'm true to believe that it was the $7,000 in 2021 because Gorse Landing Hall did not receive any money in 22. Therefore, that 3,000 went to the Harwood people, which made it 10,000. So it should level out again at 7,000, in my own personal view, and make everybody equal again, and go down in Community Care for 9 and the Bethlehem Walk for 1,000, and that'll hopefully straighten the budget out. It's my personal opinion.
On my understanding of your summary, I concur. Any further questions or comments? Thank you, Nezra. Guess we do have a question. Mark?
Just a question that we have these miscellaneous grants to community services. Any idea what those are? Did we ever use any of those, Nezra? Because there's
Mr. Mayor.
$2,000 there.
Right, we did not use anything this year, but in the past years we did.
Okay, so we could possibly use that for somewhere like a Harwood Hall if we so wish.
If
Cool.
council directs me to this.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, just a quick overview again, Nezrat, Harwood Hall, 7,000. Trevor?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. That $2,000 was the from our fee reimbursement policy when groups come forward.
Yes.
And then the coordinators reviewed that in November, the fourth quarter, to determine who's going to get fee reimbursements for that.
Has anybody been coming forward due to COVID?
We do get some requests. Now, not everybody meets the criteria required, but
Okay, thank you.
Nazrat, just for clarity again, so we don't get askew here, could you just simply give us the dollar values that add up to the 22 and where they would or propose to go to?
To you, Mr. Mayor. Hardwood Hall, $7,000. Gore's Landing, $1,500. Community Care, $9,000. Bethlehem Walk, $1,000. Royal Legion, $1,500. And the community grant will remain at $2,000. And that adds up to $22,000, which flatlines the budget.
Everybody got it? Okay. Any questions or comments? It's being suggested to me that we need a motion on this. Could I have a mover, please, to approve what's just been described to us in detail? Moved by John, seconded by. Somebody's got to really put up their hand here, guys. Been moved by John, seconded by Bruce.
Mr. Mayor, just as a matter of procedure, if there is any one of these items that a member of council would like to see changed, we can separate the motion. So rather than allow the entire recommendation to fail, it can be separated and dealt with separately should a member make that.
Thank you. Is there any request to separate? Okay, it's been moved, been seconded. Any further comments or questions? All those in the favor of the motion to approve? Carried. Thank you.
To you, Mr. Mayor, that concludes the operating budget for 2023. We are proposing an increase of 6.7%. And if you factor in the assessment growth of 0.9%, the net levy increase for 2023 is 5.8%. Is there any question on operating budget before I move to capital budget?
Nezrat, in some years in the past, we've taken our lunch break between capital and operating. It is 12:01. Does anyone have any information as to that potential? Would we like to break at this point in time? With the goal of being back in 1.5 hour? Yes, break. Okay, so I believe a motion for recess is in order. It's been moved. Do we have a seconder? Several, thank you. Let's put down John and all those in favor? Carried. Suggested 1.5 hour from now. Thank you, everyone. we're back in session. Nazareth, back to you, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've completed the 2023 operating budget presentation, and I will move to 2023 draft capital budget presentation. If I can take everyone to page 116. Just to recap, staff is proposing a budget of approximately $2.3 million for 2023. Fire department's budget request for personal protective equipment replacement that was actually pre-approved by council at the first special budget meeting. So I'll dip into the roads fleet and roads budget. Does council have any question on roads fleet or roads budget?
Nazareth, just for clarity, could you tell us what's roads fleet is?
So roads fleet, they're requesting three projects of two vehicle tractor and mower replacement for $340,000 to be funded from roads vehicle and equipment reserve. Truck 7 for $80,000 to be funded from roads vehicle and equipment reserve, and MTO and safety license device $25,000 to be funded from roads vehicle and equipment reserve.
And if there are questions, is now the time to ask, or is it as we move forward through each individual?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, if you have any questions on road fleet budget, this would be the perfect time to ask.
Okay, questions, anyone? Mark?
Lucas, I mean, you've asked for the John Deere tractor and more, and I actually just took a walk over there before the meeting today, and I noticed our other one is sitting outside. I mean, is there a place to put, if we were to buy a new one, is there any place we can put this piece of equipment?
We would have to look at our current storage area of our Cold Springs Hall. We may be able to relocate some of the vehicles in order to house some of the equipment inside, but with that type of equipment that we are proposing on days like today, with not just a mower, it would also be used for grass, that machine would be running almost all year round. So it wouldn't be really sitting like the actual existing John Deere tractor outside. It would be actually out on the roads working on days like today.
It would be doing what on days, sorry?
Brushing, because it's going to have the additional attachment for also brushing and roadside grass.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? John, please.
Through you, Mayor Jib, when you talk about the tractor mower replacement, you're talking about the actual arm that goes out, like you sense the video that
Yes.
the arm that goes out and does all the trimming. What there's 5 different attachment for blades. Which blades would you be having on that one?
When we received the quote, and obviously through our procurement policy, we would have to write a tender for a specific unit such as this, but for that quote and for this budget, it included a vegetation mower, which is a little bit quicker for roadside grass cutting. So we can move, like that video I sent, that one piece of equipment is moving fairly quickly. But then the second head would be for to change the blades, and would allow us to take 4-inch brush or vegetation or limbs with that arm as well. So to be a versatile machine, the plan would be in the grow season is to do the roadside grass cutting. And then once the vegetation has been completed, we would switch the head and then go back to like brush up to 4 inches to improve our sight lines.
Anything further? Lucas, I have questions in relationship to the brusher roadside cutter. Previously in conversations, whether it be at committee level or here at first budget meeting, I had concerns about our opportunities of managing an operation of our equipment. As we continue to buy equipment, we seem to be in a position where it seems to be sitting more and more with time. We only have a certain number of operators, whether it be for snowplows, graders, loaders. We have to factor out you as management and your assistant as management that aren't going to be running equipment. We have to factor out students. because they're not going to be running this equipment. Do we have a business plan that allows our machinery that we have to be fully used to its capacity without sitting? And why I'm asking that is also in keeping with the idea what machinery disappears or can disappear with this ask, considering it may be approved.
So this piece of equipment that we are requesting, it, I wouldn't say it's an additional piece of equipment because the plan would be to obviously to deem the John Deere tractor and the existing flail mower that on it, it would be surplus. So it would be sold in the summer months or in the growing season during June, July, August. That tractor is out with typically with a dedicated an employee running it throughout the township. We do intend to change a little bit and focus our attention with a versatile piece of machinery like this. We would be able to use them on the roadside a little bit narrower and allow for a one-person operation. As I mentioned in the last meeting with our existing mechanical brusher, it does take some additional staffing for traffic control, for additional person on the ground, as I'll call it, as a spotter to make sure for overhead wires, utility boxes. So this one would be utilized significantly more to allow for us to improve our sight lines because it would only require one staff level or staff person to run this machine. As for your other comment, no, what was it now? I forget. What was the other component of it?
Staffing component of it. And
Attachments.
attachments.
So through that video, and if anybody watched it, there was also a brochure looking at something similar like this. They do have multiple different attachments. Staff isn't proposing anything like significant changes. We are looking into it, but as time moves on through our forecasting, there is equipment that is not utilized as much. Maybe, for example, the backhoe. Would it be a time when the backhoe was replaced? Could we add the attachment of the front end loader to this specific unit to make it more utilized, to have multiple attachments, only have one piece of equipment? That is, or that will be an option as we move forward through future budgets to consider if that is somewhere we can reduce our assets and our equipment. But we are looking at options and scenarios, even if there isn't a loader attachment for a piece of machinery such as this, when the other second loader is deemed to be replaced, is it an opportunity to add that attachment at that time? So I'm trying to look outside the box for just specializing in one piece of equipment. We are looking at options of having have one piece of equipment with multiple attachments to utilize more often.
I reviewed what information you had provided us in respect to a specific machine. And you've alluded to it, of course, we have to go through a procurement process. If I were to comment just on that machine, I had a lot of concerns on durability, availability of parts, potential breakdown time periods. And at the same time, realizing that that might not be the one that we have an option of purchasing through the procurement process. Any of the videos that I watched, the primary function, if not the only function, was grass cutting. I didn't see any component of anything else. The brush cutting component, I saw some still pictures in a brochure of a V-shaped snowplow on the front. And I went, that ain't gonna work in this municipality. I also saw some pictures of a straight blade on the front of that. And I went, that's not gonna work in this municipality. So I have a lot of reservations on that machine. I do accept and do appreciate the fact that our brush, my word, brush on the roadsides needs attention. the disposal or the selling of our John Deere tractor isn't going to net us a lot of money, but I can see the proposal that it does get us some. It does serve a purpose. I don't know the status of the mower that's on it, other than the fact I know it's the second mower since I've sat on council. It's there now. Have we had any issues with that mower? I guess is one question I'll throw you that way, Lucas. And the other question I'll throw you that way is if this machine that I've seen in the video doesn't need someone to spot with it, however you say that, around utility wires and boxes, why is that? So two questions, one on the old mower, have we had any trouble or is it not doing a pretty good job for what it's intended to do? And the second question is on this video machine, why doesn't it need a spotter?
So as for the first component of the question about mower replacement on the John Deere, as per the budget enhancement sheet, it will need to be rebuilt, refurbished. There is some components of that machine, safety guards on the PTO shaft that does need to be replaced. Bearings, the actual barrel where the blades mount on, it does need to be significantly rebuilt. So there will be a cost at that through my operating budget or through the Public Works operating budget to rebuild. And like you said, Scott, there has been some issues or we had to replace that over a few years now. They only last for about 5 years. But anyways, so there would be some cost to that for the operating budget to replace or repair the existing mower. And as for the spotter, for this type of machine, we wouldn't be reaching as far back to the property line in those certain areas. This is going to be focused on the roadside grass cutting and only attention to intersections to improve the sight lines. We still will have the big mechanical brusher there to focus the attention farther back from the roadside. And as you can see, we've done a couple areas we've brushed out, but this one would be focusing for 6 to 8 feet off of the edge of pavement on the straight lines, and then our attention at intersections to do the brushing. So there will be, obviously, this operator is going to have to be aware of utility boxes. And usually we would be doing the brushing when the vegetation is a lot less, as in winter operations or fall and spring. That will be our focus with that machine. And then the roadside grass cutting is obviously June and July when the vegetation is the most. And that's when we have the incidents where we get into obstacles such as utility boxes or guideposts. And that's typically when we have the large excavator out on the roadside, is during the spring and summer months, completing the brushing where we feel that the spotter is there pre-marking utility boxes.
Maybe my understanding of spotter is incorrect. I thought a spotter was a person that was ahead with a traffic sign slowing oncoming traffic. Am I wrong with that thought?
So the spotter person, when we typically go out, we have 2 designated staffing for traffic control. And then there's an additional person usually in the vicinity, keeping an eye on utility boxes, hydro poles, guy wires, and also if there's somebody pulling out of a driveway. So that third person typically is kind of doing multiple tasks, keeping an eye on traffic if there is somebody sneaking up, as well as locating utility boxes and guy wires. And also they actually do then they clean up after the brusher's gone with the pole saw. And I don't know if you ever seen it, but they clip and make it all nice and clean and square. So that is a responsibility, I'll call it, of that additional person.
So this new machine eliminates, of that group of 3, we got traffic ahead, traffic behind, and spotter. This new machine eliminates how many of those people?
3.
All 3 of them.
Yeah. So part of, and if you've seen them similar to what other municipalities have, as per the book 7 for traffic control, you can allow a unit to be working on the edge of the roadway with 4-way beacons and an orange amber light flashing with the mobile operation. What also I'll call it Northumberland County. I'm sure everyone's seen their tractor going around. So it doesn't need to have the full complement of staff where the excavator is a lot slower, a lot bulkier, where and also within their manual or operating manual, you have to stay 300 feet away from this machine because of the design of the rotary drum. So part of that is makes the construction site a lot larger and requiring more staff. With a unit such as this, they stay on the edge and allows for continuous movement, which then allows for reduction in staff to be with that equipment.
Okay, so our numbers, Lucas, Mesrat, our numbers for this machine is 220, which, is that correct?
No, 340.
No, I was, well, the unit plus the head is where I was going. 220 plus 120, isn't it?
Yeah, 200 for a unit and 140 for the mower and all the additional attachments. I just broke it down into that for the forecasting, so they have an understanding, because on the forecasting sheet, it shows 2 different units. One is a tractor and one is the vegetation.
Okay, so it's 200 for the base unit, 140 for the grass cutting.
Approximately, yeah.
And the grass cutting unit can have interchangeable knives on it to do the brush.
Correct.
And at that point in time, it's cutting grass and cutting brush. It's not doing any snow plowing. It's not doing any blade work. It's not doing any ditch work. It's not doing anything else other than grass and brush.
I hope so in June and July.
Okay. And there's no other use for that machine because there's no other attachments at this moment in time with those dollar values.
Correct. So that being said, though, with winter conditions like this, I mean, we have received some snow now that's built up, but the plan would be for that brusher to continue with day-to-day operations when we're not doing winter control.
Okay, and it's at this moment in time, it's replacing the John Deere as far as function is concerned, replacing the John Deere tractor with the existing mower that needs some repair, but it's not replacing anything else at this moment in time.
Not yet.
Okay, and so the ask is for 340. And what we're really picking up is, because the John Deere does a pretty good job of grass, what we're picking up is some brush primarily at the intersections.
Correct. Sightline improvements.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Anybody else have questions? Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine may be rudimentary, but is it not possible to use the existing John Deere tractor and purchase the implement, the attachment?
No, our current existing John Deere tractor just isn't sized accordingly.
It's not big.
Yeah, it's not heavy enough, and the counterweights are just not designed to add those additional attachments.
Anything further, Larry?
I'm not familiar enough with technology, so.
John?
Through you, Mayor Jim, the technicalities of the mowers, not, I've been around tractors in years, but anyway, it doesn't matter. My question here would be twofold, I guess. First of all, we have the money in reserves right now to purchase this equipment, and it's coming from the reserve budget, correct?
Correct.
If we purchase these implements, then in the 2023 budget, we are $148,000 in debt. You show here in the capital forecast for Public Works, you show a line here for 2023 and it's way below the flat line.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if this does get approved, we are projecting a deficit of $134,000 for roads, vehicle and equipment reserve. And because we are forecasting to not ask for any project in 2024, we are projecting a surplus of $200,000 by the end of 2024 for roads, vehicle and equipment reserve.
Okay. So my second concern here is the fact that if we do go into $134,000 in debt, and if something does happen to a piece of machinery that can't be replaced immediately, and we can have to replace it somehow, we have no money in that reserve budget for roads or equipment to purchase anything.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of emergencies such as that, we will bring a report to council, and we most likely will be using general reserve to fund it, and roads reserve will compensate that or pay it back the year after.
So we could end up in 2024 with zero again, or below in debt for $134,000.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that will depend on the project that we will be requesting in case of emergency.
Okay, thank you.
And Nezrat, if my notes are correct, and I'm challenging them for myself, by myself, is that the transfer to reserves that gets us to that nicer balance at the end of 2024 is 660,000 between 2023 and 2024.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. From a concept, I'm having problems getting through this one, especially when we have no assurance that the machine that we've looked at is the machine that we're going to be able to purchase through the procurement process. I'll turn. Bruce, any questions or comments? Mark, any questions or comments?
I can only say that in campaigning, and I'm sure everyone that campaigned this time around, the number one issue or one of the issues were rushing along the roadside. I mean, it was big for me. I mean, I would say of all the complaints I got, that's probably my number one complaint. So I can say it, and I see Larry shaking his head yes too. I mean, it was there, and so we have to do something. And I mean, if this is the answer, I mean, it's the answer. I mean, I'm even thinking about maybe we should even think about saving our other tractor and more, and maybe recouping or getting it going again, and having another man at certain times of the year to keep our roads cleaned up. Because I mean, the brush we get now is not like what we used to get. I mean, the growing season seems to be longer, and it seems to be the grasses and so forth are that much taller. So it's been difficult, and I sympathize with our road staff, because I mean, I watched them. They used to just go down our road once. Now they're going down 2 and 3 times. So I mean, it's changed. So maybe they have to look at keeping your other tractor besides. I hope this is the answer. That's all. I do share some of Scott's concerns with the unit and what we're looking at, and it has to go through procurement. I realize that, but I'd feel a lot better if we were buying a John Deere tractor and putting looking at 2 different attachments for it than I do looking at something that's coming over from Europe, and just parts bother me. But the other part that bothers me is some of these companies come and go, and I just hate to see us buy something in 3, 4, 5 years from now, it's not in existence anymore. And you're just not going to get universal parts for those.
And I do appreciate the comments. I mean, this is something that obviously staff needs to do additional. Like, we have reached out to a neighboring municipality with one of these pieces of equipment. I just did not have time to organize a meeting. It's if this happened, if this is passed, staff isn't entertaining to put a tender out tomorrow. So we want to make sure that, and I mean, we can do it through coordinators to make sure we do purchase something that is going to meet the needs of the township. Either a machine like this, after we do our research, we feel comfortable on something like this, or do we still go back to a similar design of where Northumberland County with a John Deere tractor and an arm? So we do know that brushing and visibility is an issue. Staff is not proposing to put out a tender. Like I said, tomorrow there is still going to be some homework for staff to make sure what is the best type of equipment for the township to continue with improving our brushing and visibility on 300 kilometers of road.
One second, John. Lucas, based on our absence of history and experience in relationship to our roadsides, I'm thinking that we've had contractors, and again, to use your train of thought, we've all seen them. We've seen that blue Ford tractor on the roadside doing county roads. Would there be any consideration that we could take a year to experience what it's going to do, that type of arm and that type of machine, through a rental process or through a contract process, to see what it's going to do to our roadsides and see what our brush is going to come back. I think we all have enough experience that if you cut down one Manitoba maple shoot in May, it's 10 in July, and the next year it's 20. And this machine, regardless of what it is, isn't going to change that. So I guess I'm throwing out at you, could there be any consideration that we could experience through a lease, through a rental, through a contract, this process?
So through the conversations with companies, they haven't really spoke much regarding lease or rental of the equipment. I'm sure they would entertain something like that. Obviously, there would be a cost associated to rental, and it would affect operating budget. In my past, I've seen where we contracted out brushing, and it ranges from 200 and a quarter an hour to 300 some an hour. And I've also done it in the past where we measured it in a kilometer for brushing, roadside brushing. And it came in about $7,000 per kilometer for roadside brushing. So if it is something that it can be done over a period of 3 or 4 years, could you have your own piece of equipment and pay for itself? I would think it could, but we're willing to entertain to do something for a short-term purpose, but then obviously it would affect my operating budget if we decided to contract it out or lease something or rent something. I'm not sure where that would fall within my operating budget.
John, I think you were.
Just through you, Mayor Jib, I was going to entertain that same thought of going a different direction, is to basically say that we just make a motion that we send this back to coordinators and see what other options are available for the municipality before we rush into an immediate purchase. I know you've said that in your own words, and Mark has alluded to that, and so has Scott. That you're on the same boat at coordinators, and therefore I think it should be thought of and looked at a lot more dedicated time before we move forward with this.
For you, Mr. Mayor, I guess my question would be, if Nazrat wouldn't mind guiding the process to ensure that if this motion does take place, that the ultimate adoption of the capital budget, if we could just go through that process and make sure that it's in alignment with what you expected.
Right. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if council wants to remove it from the budget, we will need a motion for this.
Okay, I think I heard every word there. Just let me repeat it so I make sure I got it. If council wishes, they could make a motion at this point in time to have it pulled from the budget and sent back to staff and coordinators for further review and investigation. Am I correct in saying that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you. Okay. Any further comments or questions?
Where are we leaving this in? Because I mean, for Lucas to use this piece of equipment this year, we've soon got to purchase something or do something. So I mean, we're looking at, or he's got to repair what he has. So that we're into February now. You're going to start brushing probably May, June. So we need an answer within the next few months. So can we put a time frame on this?
We could ask that it be brought back before coordinators in, the next coordinators meeting, which
Okay.
I have in my head that it's March 6th or 7th.
So will you have enough information by then, Lucas, to?
Yeah, I will. I guess it's kind of, if I can schedule a on-site meeting or demonstration of something, so you at least see this type of equipment, I think that would probably be the best way to understand the equipment and take a look at it, have it physically, and maybe somebody can even bring one down and demo it for a day or two. I'll see what I can do.
Okay, thank you.
I'm smiling now, Lucas. You think you get them to demo it for a couple of months? That would be the best for this budget. Anyway, back to serious. Any further questions or comments? John, you were leading a bit there. Would you
Yeah,
entertain a motion or?
I make a motion to remove the tractor and mower replacement of $340,000 from the capital budget and have it go back to staff and a direct, sorry, the Committee of Public Works for further review.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to that motion? Seconded by Bruce. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Nezrat, back to you, I guess. Where were we?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're still on page 116. Does council have any question on the roads project?
I'm sorry, partner, who has? Bruce?
So as per I didn't bring the copy of the roads need study. I think it's scheduled. Roads need study was completed by a third party. And it's completed every 5 years. So last time it was done in 2019, and I think they have recommended it to be reconstructed within 1 to 5 years. So it is on Public Works radar to do probably the next, won't guarantee anything, obviously, but probably the next year or two.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have to apologize. Under road fleet, I didn't ask whether anyone else has any other question before I move to roads. Okay, then I'm safe. Oh, no.
Please, John.
Through Mayor Jib, this MTO safety licensing device, has there been any movement on any other?
No movement. We have been asking multiple times about this process because we have to order additional yellow stickers for our commercial vehicles for the annual safeties. There seems to be very silent, so we're just continuing our process of what has happened in the previous years, doing an annual safety, yellow stickering, and then continuing with our business. So until we get some definite answers, then we'll move forward through this capital. And like I said, this is something that it may happen in a couple months. It may happen in 2024. So I just want to flag it because there could be a possible change in the safeties and emission testing.
Thank you. Now, the other thing, next question through Mayor Jib, this is $80,000 for this. Now it's a 3/4 ton pickup. I thought it was a 1/2 ton before. I'm kind of confused.
So during the discussions with staff as well as sharing resources with vehicles and equipment, with our current Public Works fleet, we typically move the fleet around, and as they come to their life cycle, they move to the Public Work or Parks and Rec department. So during the vehicle review and analysis with the existing fleet we do have, with moving some vehicles around within the department, it doesn't, if we decided to buy a smaller pickup truck, we wouldn't be able to move it down through the Public Works fleet, then ultimately to Parks and Rec. So we are proposing to purchase a 3/4 ton, a new 3/4 ton, and then staggering the fleet, moving it around, and then ultimately another 3/4 ton would then go to Parks and Rec department.
Go ahead, John.
So the Parks and Rec Department then be getting the used 3/4 ton with the plow, et cetera.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could bounce in there, and truck 7 is the gray truck that Parks and Rec currently has.
Yes, and that's the one that they use in Bewdley to plow the parking lot.
And it was the one that broke down not too long ago on 28 Highway.
Yep, and we did get it repaired about approximately 2 weeks ago. It was a minor repair. It was a service trailer brake controller module. But now again, more lights have came up as of yesterday or the day before. So now the check engine light's on, traction control light is on, stable track controls. So there seems to be some components within this truck are causing some obviously issues for reliability and maintenance.
It hasn't shut down again since 28 highway.
Not yet.
Okay, any questions? We're following back with Nezrat here. Any other questions on roads fleet? I mean, there's MTO license, there's the pickup truck, and there's the mower replacement that we dealt with. Any further questions in that section? Okay. Moving back to roads. Nezrat, you want to pick up again, please? And
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for the road overlay and also guardrail, we are requesting approximately $1.7 million. Does council have any question on that?
John?
Yes, I'm kind of confused a bit. Maybe Lucas can help me out here. You have the public works yard down as a road repair. Why would that be? You have in the actual roads that you're going to be working on, the parking lot is in that category. Why was it classified as a road?
So I believe, and Nezra can quote me or help me out here, because Public Works doesn't have a facilities reserve to use funds out of that reserve to pave the parking lot of the Public Works building. We decided to include it as per our roads program.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We don't, the Public Works don't have a facility reserve. And I do want to mention that this project is not funded from a particular reserve. It is going to be funded from tax levy.
You've got me lost for words.
I got one. I'll fill in for you, John. If this 220 is funding from budget, from tax levy, if it were eliminated, we would be effectively reducing our overall budget by 2%.
The budget will be reduced to 3.3%. But I do want to caution everyone, if you remove it from the tax levy, it will have a significant impact on reduction in service in the next few years. And it will take us years to get back to the 859 that we have right now. So what I would recommend, with your permission, Mr. Mayor, if you are to remove this project, replace it with something else.
An alternate project like, I don't know, Bruce just mentioned Cabot Road or something otherwise that could be considered.
So we did review the roads needs study through the process of maybe a concern or comment regarding the Public Works building. Staff does have a proposal that if the Public Works area wasn't to be paved and we use those funds somewhere else, the next road would be Racetrack Road from Harwood Road to Crossing. So that is part of our roads needs study. We reviewed it. It kind of meets the funding requirements. So and it was actually on my original budget request, but I had to reduce it a little bit. So so I would propose, if that was the interest of council, we could remove the Public Works garage and replace it with a road. But
Just for clarity, I reside on Racetrack Road and I would not want to be sitting here as the head of council when the road in front of my place got done. I don't think that's a good position to be in. However, I don't reside on that east end. It's just been described. John, you had your hand up.
Yes, now that I've kind of regained my thought again. So we don't have facility reserve for the public works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
So through the asset management plan, would that not dictate you have to have some kind of reserve in place to repair that facility in the near future?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the asset management plan will do that, as well as identify the fact that we are not contributing as much as we should be to replace our assets. So asset management plan not only will identify additional reserve, but it will also identify how much we need to increase our contribution by. So I'm not talking about just for road, but for overall.
So my next question is to Lucas is how long ago was this parking lot paved?
So there has been, well, I have some notes here somewhere. So during, when the cold storage building was built, that would be the farthest east building. That section kind of in and around that facility during construction, it was paved in 2010. More recently, when the sand dome was built in 2018, we paved an apron around the sand dome out approximately 10 meters or so in front of the salt shed. And then we paved a little ways down the west entrance to the facility. The rest of the building from the old shop, speaking to some of my staff, they believe it's original asphalt, and that original building was built in, I believe, 1970, 71. So the intent here would be, obviously, if there's existing asphalt that was done in 2010 and 2018, we would abut to it and not dig it out or remove it, because it is in half decent shape, and we would just focus our attention on the areas where it is the original asphalt still.
Okay, so my take on this then, as far as I'm concerned, and I've heard this from numerous residents, it's the same as when Bruce was referring to the fact of Cavan Road, that we have a lot of other roads here that are in very dire needs of repair than we do a parking lot that's been repaved in 2010. I think if it's going to be part of our facility budget, it should be done under the asset management plan. They can come up with projected figures and say, okay, we need to repave, or we need to, whatever we have to do with the building. So I think this should be removed and replaced with another road somewhere else. That's my own personal opinion.
Thank you, John. Mark?
I did have opportunity to go take a look at this, and I mean, it's hard to tell this time of year because everything's frozen and then slightly ice covered and so forth. But I did get the sense of where it stopped and where it started and so forth when I went over there, and it is pretty dirty and mucky and so forth in those areas. You could see where there's basically no asphalt there. Am I not right with that, Lucas? I mean, it looks like right in front of the buildings, there's very little to none.
It is getting decreased in the strength of it for sure over the last few years, especially with these winters now, the freeze thaw. We all know how the roads are breaking up, especially in our parking lot. We have the consistent traffic going in and out of the garage, and then also when we are filling the sand dome, it is difficult to say clean up the sand on existing asphalt that is alligator broke up, and then we get obviously the residue and some of the other materials getting into the sand and salt shed when we fill the sand dome. So I mean, at some point it will need to be done, and I leave that up to council's discretion. I mean, it'd be to clean it all up, to keep that facility looking neat and tidy. That's why we kind of proposed it this year.
Is it, I guess, can I just follow up? I mean, could we look at, if we were to do it even next year, I mean, or the year after? I mean, I do agree that we need to do it at some point. Whether we do it this year or not, I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to tell because, as I say, I went over and everything's frozen. You'd know better than anyone would as far as that goes, whether it needs doing or not. But if not, if we can carry it for another year, at least put something aside for next year into our reserve, or perhaps leave it in our reserve for next year's budget so that we can get it all done in one go. So if you're looking at 220, I mean, even if we spend an extra 110 on roads and put half of it in this year and do it all next year.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, if council want, what we can do, instead of 220, we can transfer 50% of it to a reserve so that we can do this project next year, partially at least, and use the remaining 50% to fund another project, another roads project.
I'll buy in. I very much like that idea. And I very much like idea to use a reserve for a specific project that we've been putting money into that reserve for. Drawing reserves down to nothing scares me, to be honest with you. Putting them into negatives is even worse for me. But yet at the same time, with this potential process, we're building to the goal that Lucas is saying that we need to build to. So I think that's a win-win situation, to be honest with you. Anyway, in reflection of where we are in respect to the budget, if that's the mindset of council, again, I turn to staff and say, is it appropriate to introduce a motion here to that effect?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Would anyone like to make a motion then, Mark?
I'd make that a motion if, you know, I'm going to ask one more time, Lucas, is that something that's possible? I mean, is that yard going to last another year without?
I mean, it
big
has
issue?
been deteriorating for many years. I mean, we can, if the intent is to put money aside into reserves and plan on completing it in 2024, I mean, we can continue using it for another year. And as for the 110,000 that would be set aside still for another road, I don't have that value for a road off the top of my head to spend it on, but that is something that obviously we can put it to somewhere out within the township.
Sure. Sure. Well, I'd be happy to make that a motion then, Mr. Mayor, and put that on the
Yeah.
floor.
The only component of this, before we actually make the motion, the only component of this is the aspect of this being funded from roads rather than a facility component. And what I'm hearing is that thought isn't a valid thought. It has to come from roads because we've got nothing else.
That's right.
Although we could establish this as a facility roads reserve, right, rather than anything else.
Right, through you, Mr. Mayor, right now it's not coming from any reserve, right? That 220 was to come from tax levy.
Yes. So what we're doing is we're putting 110 into a reserve, which you could call whatever you wish. I mean, it doesn't have to go into a roads reserve. You could call it a facility reserve.
That's correct.
And then you could use your other 110 for whatever road.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the motion should clearly state exactly which reserve you would want me to transfer this
We'll put it into
$110,000.
a roads building
Roads
reserve.
facility reserve.
Sure. Or facility reserve. Sure.
Well, I got hands going over here. Did we get a motion or not? 100% moved? Is it clear? The seconder to the motion. Any further comments or questions? Okay, I wondered.
We're going to put 110,000 into a roads facility reserve, and 110,000 will be spent on a road, which Lucas will, yes, it's just for budget purposes. So we'll put 110,000 into our roads for roads project.
But at the same time, this motion doesn't reflect on any saving on the,
There'll be no savings on our
no
overall
savings.
budget. No,
Still the 220.
no.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, it's been moved, it's been seconded, it's been clarified. Any questions or comments? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you.
If I can take everyone to page 117. This page identifies the capital request from Parks and Facilities, Planning, and General Government. It's identical to what we have presented at the first special budget meeting. Any question on this page? If not,
I think we maybe should hesitate just a little bit, Nezra. I think a lot of minds are still on the last topic, just still. Any questions for Nezra on the capital budget for parks and facilities? John?
Through you, Mayor Jib, I just want to make it quite clear to the, whoever the public is listening right now, or maybe listening in the near future, that we are considering a $30,000 grant for the Laurel Park playground equipment. That will only enhance that. If we get the grant, then that will move forward with a full playground equipment, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's absolutely correct.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Mark?
Can you just go over the bathroom renovations for Baltimore? I mean, those washrooms have been an issue for a number of years. So what are we going to do to make them that much better?
So it'll be removal of everything, repainting, installing new toilets, urinals, and stalls in both the men's and women's bathrooms.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions, John?
Yes, will there be some kind of mechanism on those doors so that they're not open 24/7? They'll be open at a certain time and then they'll close at a certain time. You'll have a
Yeah, so
timing
yeah,
on it?
we're similar to what we have at the Beauty Waterfront. There'll be a timer on the locks so that obviously you can't get locked in it, but you can't open it after a certain time. It's usually 11 o'clock and then they'll open again at 6 a.m.
Oh, thank you. Good.
Any other questions or comments? Nazrat?
To you, Mr. Mayor, that is 2023 capital budget. Because we just removed, or council removed the tractor and more replacement of $340,000. Staff is now requesting approximately $1.9 million worth of capital. So it's 1982064. That's the capital request for this year. Is there any question on 2023 capital request? It's 1,982,064.
Bruce, please.
So it was 2322064. That was on page 115. We reduced that by $340,000. Now it's at 1982064.
Mark, please.
Just so I'm clear, when we're done our capital, I know we didn't approve it today for the tractor and more, but the chances are that may come out into the future.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when it comes to capital budget, it's funded from mostly reserves, right? So
Yes.
it will not have any tax implications. So we can bring forward another report to council during 2023, requesting council for approval of projects.
Yeah, because we have to do something for our roadside trimming, that's for sure. So
That's
good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Do any staff members have any questions or comments?
Through you, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, this concludes my presentation for 2023 operating and capital budget. Staff is requesting that council approve the 2023 draft operating and capital budget that's presented.
Nope, I'll read the motion and then we'll get a mover and a seconder. Any other questions or comments before we move forward? Okay, prepared motion that council approve report T 2023-04, 2023 second draft operating and capital budget, Township of Hamilton and Building Department. I got it right? Yeah? Okay. Do I have a mover? Moved by Mark, seconded by Bruce. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Our next report is still Nazrat and other staff. Anita, I'm sure. And it's report number 2023-05. Second draft operating and capital budget water.
To you, Mr. Mayor, staff is recommending that council approve the 2023 draft operating and capital budget for water operation. I am going to be passing the floor to our water manager, who will introduce her department, talk about the accomplishment and priorities.
Good afternoon, Mayor Jip, council, staff, and the public. Last special budget meeting was cut a little short, and we also had freezing rain to contend with. So I did cut my presentation short, so I'll elaborate a little now if I may. So an overview for the Water Operations Department is that we are responsible for the treatment and distribution of safe drinking water through compliance with all relevant Ontario legislation. Our department is committed to continuous improvements initiative and preventive maintenance activities to enhance the operations of our water systems. I have been here for just over 2 years. I consider myself relatively new to the organization. And with my still fresh eyes, I can say that all of us in the water department and any staff within the township that support the water department are highly dedicated to providing the safest drinking water, utilizing every precious dollar from the ratepayers in the most efficient way. I did mention a number of accomplishments last time, so if I could pass over that, that's okay. And then for 2023 priorities, we'll discuss these in the upcoming presentation by Nazra. Back to you.
Thank you, Anita. If I can request everyone to go to page 6 of the budget package. This is identical to what we presented at the first special budget meeting on the 19th of January. Is there any question on this page? If not, I would move to page 7 of this budget package. Again, no change from what we have presented at the first special budget meeting. Is there any question on page 7?
Just one question through you, Mayor Jib. Nazareth, I've seen, I'm just new here on council. Imagine Bruce probably is thinking the same thing. This capital loan and interest payments, where'd that money come from, and what did we purchase from the water department, or what happened with the water service from there?
So during 2021 to budget deliberation, council approved certain projects to be funded from debt. And we are going to be borrowing, we're just waiting to close those projects, and we are going to be borrowing money from Infrastructure Ontario. Once we start borrowing, we have to pay interest and principal, and that's reflected here. Where it's going to be funded from, it's going to be funded from operating.
Very good, thank you.
Just so John's aware, I mean, when John was here last, I think we funded a lot of this through our own reserves. And since then, we've gone to outside of our own reserves to fund these projects. So it has changed that way. That's why there's interest now.
And staying with that thought that we don't have a lot of history here with some of us, Anita, could you just give us a very high level comment on what some of those projects were and our successes with them, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Rehabilitation of well 1A at Camborne, rehabilitation of well 2A at Camborne, High Lift Pump Number 3 refurbishment at Creighton Heights, Wells 1, 6, and 7 rehabilitation at Creighton Heights. That's just to name a few off the top of my head.
One of the components that you're always pleased to talk about is the cement lining in the Butter subdivision area.
Correct.
A quick aside, any questions or comments on that list of accomplishments? Thank you.
If there's no more question on page 7, can we move to page 8 of the budget package, please? Again, there is no change from what we presented at the first special budget meeting. Is there any question on this page? If not, I will move to page 9 of the budget package. Again, this is identical to what we presented at the first special budget meeting. Is there any question on page 9? If not, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my 2023 operating budget for water. I will now move to page 10, which is the capital budget for water. In terms of what we are presenting here, there's a slight change from what I presented at the first special budget meeting. We are for now temporarily removing the water master plan study from the budget request now, simply because we do need some time to calculate or justify the funding allocation to see whether a portion of it will be funded from township. I do need a little bit more time on that. I will bring that report back to council in 2023, but for now we would request to remove that from the budget. And if, as you can see in the capital budget 2023 request, I have not included that. Is there any question on page 10?
Is there any thoughts when that might be back before council for debate?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know, but it will come back in 2023. We just need a little bit more time in terms of the scope because we do want to present a comprehensive report to council.
Thank you. Arthur?
And just to support through your Mayor Jib, the comment, we know that some things are changing with respect to funding sources, especially with regarding the development charges and some of the fees that can be used or funds that can be drawn from those sources. So we want to look at both the sources, the scope, as well as getting a sound proposal that we'll bring back to council, hopefully mid-year. So we have some time to progress it this year.
Thank you, Arthur.
Is there any question on the 2 capital projects that we are requesting for water operation in 2023?
Questions or comments? Larry?
Just one, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question. Is there any way we can top up the funds for doing the meters? Increase the meters?
To you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely, we can. It's just we are going to be borrowing money in order to do so.
I keep thinking if we can increase the meters, we can increase our profits there, revenue. But there's no money here no, okay. All right, well, thank you.
Sound idea, except for one aspect. Can't afford it. John?
Through you, Mayor Jib, I was thinking, just something popped in my head. What about the efficiency fund? Is there any money in that to?
To you, Mr. Mayor, 100% of the efficiency fund that we have received have already been allocated to different projects. What I will do at the end of the year, bring a report to council in terms of where we stand in terms of those projects. And if there is any kind of savings, I will be recommending projects to council, and water meter might be one of those.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation on water's operating and capital budget. Staff is recommending that council approve the 2023 draft operating and capital budget that we're presenting to council now for water.
Again, we have a prepared motion that council approve report T 2023-05, being the 2023 second draft operating and capital budget water. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Larry, seconder. Seconded by Mark. And if we went to a recorded vote now, we would be in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I will simply ask each member of council to simply say yay or nay. Councillor Butter. Councillor Davidson. Councillor Lovshin. Deputy Mayor Williamson.
Yay.
And Mayor Jip.
Yay.
Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Bruce, do you have a question?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I had a lady approach me one day after I was elected and she's on water in Creighton Heights. And she said, are they going to do something because her water was unusable? And it was brown and she couldn't do anything. I'm asking a question like, is that something that has happened or is going to happen?
Anita, would you like to answer that here? Or would you like to answer it later after we're outside of budget?
Certainly here is okay.
Go for it.
We are working with Walkerton Clean Water Center to conduct a pilot study that will determine ways to remove the naturally occurring ammonia that contributes to the color that people are experiencing. And that project is in progress. And it's a little slow because they're trying to secure the actual pilot from the EPA, from the US. So once we secure that, then it'll be placed at the Creighton Heights plant and will run as a pilot for the course of a year. So we get all 4 seasons. And then we'll do some determinations from there as to what approach is best for removing the odd color.
Thank you.
Arthur?
If I may, through you, Mayor Jib, in response to the comment that you received, there is the discoloration issue, which Anita, water manager, has pointed out does exist and that we're aware of, that we try to manage. I know the project to replace the green sand filters should help to some degree as far as our improvements to the system. And the Walkerton Clean Water Project will help as well, but we do meet all provincial standards and requirements for to ensure that our water is drinkable and meets all requirements of the province. But there is the issue that we're aware of and that we try to address through flushing and through some of the other improvements we're making with respect to discoloration. And again, some of these other projects will help address that going forward. Good.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Anita. Next item of business on our agenda is our confirmatory bylaw. It is recommended that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. That bylaw 2023-07, being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of the council meeting held on the 2nd day of February 2023, and to authorize its execution be given first, second, and third reading, and finally passed this 2nd day of February 23. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Larry, seconder by Bruce. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn. Arthur, no.
No, no motion to adjourn from me. But may I make one comment, Mayor Jib, before you close the meeting?
Please.
With respect to 2 issues. One is informational, and that is we did receive, I believe all members of council received some further questions from member of the Citizens Council Hamilton Township, CCH2, which is the ratepayers group. And the two questions we'll be following up with at a future date with feedback to council on those issues. And that the second thing I wanted to mention is now the council has approved both our operating as well as our water capital, or our capital budget rather, is to say thank you to council for the considerable work that you've underdone and reviewing line by line, working with us. And I hope the materials that Nusrat, our treasurer, has brought forward in combination with the incredible work package that Emily was able to help put together, the phenomenal support of the senior team, many of which you see here, supporting both the discussions and the questions and answers you've had, but also supporting the development of the material throughout the last several months. And of course, the finance team and the remainder of the building who've supported in this preparation of this material. So I wanted to thank both the team, the council for their considered opinions and feedback and insights, and for the discussion today leading to the approval. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Arthur. And I would certainly echo that. I had several ratepayers reach out to me and comment in a very positive fashion about the budget packages. So thank you to all. And we were about to adjourn. Pardon me. We had a motion by Mark, seconder by Bruce. All those in favor? Thank you. And we'll just hesitate for a moment until we get off